So my presentation this morning is going to be about how we're using Teams at scale and the experiences so far and some of the lessons learned, etc., that you can kind of take in your areas if you are actually thinking of developing Teams as an addition to your VLE or even as a replacement to your VLE, like Lawrie was saying. So I'm Santanu, I'm from the University of East London. I head up the Teaching and Learning Centre. I manage 3 educational technologists and 3 academic developers and an administrator. The slides are on SlideShare. So just a bit about myself. I've been working in a variety of roles around educational technology and development since 2004. Those are some of the publications and some of the bits and pieces that I've done, both at HEA and LTHE Chat, etc., etc. I'm actually a trained graphic designer. You've probably noticed that as the slides go on. I'm also a trained secondary school teacher of IT and DT. And I've been working in this sector, as I said, on and off for about 16 years, and I'm now heading up this centre. And these roles are from a book that I'm currently reading by David Baum, the co-founder of CEDA. You can take a look at it when you get time. So make education better. This is a quote from Steve Wheeler from Plymouth in 2013, and it echoes what Helen was saying earlier as well, working with machines and increasingly practitioners of all kinds, whether it's doctors, people who are pharmacists, etc., etc., they're working with machines to analyze data, or even working with physical machines in a workshop or another area. So technology won't replace teachers, but teachers who use technology will replace those that don't. And this is a manifesto from Peter Bryant. He used to run the equivalent department to where I am at the London School of Economics. He's at Sydney Business School now. He's the Associate Dean there. And he and I have been exchanging tweets, and then we came up with this hashtag. It was actually his hashtag, so it's not mine. I'm kind of promoting it here, and he's got a blog post about it, which is on the link there. We have to think really about pedagogy first, and this is taken. It's another. I like hashtags, but this is another quote from a book that was published in 2008 by the late Robin Mason, who used to work at the Open University, and this is from that book. And it basically says that before you start thinking about your technology, think about how you want to use it and how you want to interact with it educationally. So think about the actual learning design. And this is something that increasingly academic developers and learning technologists and people who work in education need to think about. And I know Keele are doing work around this with program design, and my department are doing similar things as well this term. So really it's about learning design. This is from a paper from 2016 by James Dale. He's got a book out as well about this particular area, and it's really about the educational notation that we still in higher education don't have. In the book, and early on in the book, he mentions that thousands of years ago, people didn't know how to write music because they thought it was really, really complicated. And now, obviously, music notation is very commonplace, and we need to get to that common understanding about how we actually describe learning and teaching, so that one teacher can take a lesson, a session, and not run it the same, but at least have an idea about what the previous teacher was intending to do. And often we don't. We have VLEs with lots of slides and content, and we don't have that plan from the module spec to the actual session plan. We don't have anything in between. We don't have sort of medium-term session plans or schemes of work. So we don't have those things. So this is a really interesting point there. When I was asked to do this by Lawrie, thank you, Lawrie, and also thank you to Peter Bryant as well. I was kind of originally it was a panel, and then it became a keynote. So I had an interaction with Donna Lanclos. Some of you might know Donna. She's an American anthropologist and has done some work at UEL regarding libraries and physical learning spaces. That's my particular area of interest. And she's got this blog post about the various types of keynotes. So I'm just hoping that I hit the right keynote there. So there's various types there. You probably noticed I'll go in and out of various types there, from persuader, hopefully entertainer, bit of reporting, especially about my institution, So the aims of the keynote really are to give you a pedagogical rationale as to why we chose Teams in the first place, and why you may choose Teams or not, depending on your institutional priorities. I'm going to give you some examples and experiences of UEL's approach to deploying this at scale. I'm going to show you a couple of quick videos, and then lessons learned and our next steps. So what are we thinking of doing as we improve this term? We're in week 4 of teaching right now, so it's being used at the moment. You'll see some live data as of yesterday from the actual system. It's mixed. I think that's probably the nicest way of putting it, but it kind of gives you an example of where we've actually targeted the use of it. We've seen an increase, at least in terms of messages, channel interaction, and active users. So these are the kind of proxies for measuring the engagement without doing some more qualitative data analysis. So I'm going to quickly show you this.
So I'm Dan Duran. I'm the cluster lead for art and design, which means I'm in charge of all the subjects within art and design: photography, illustration, graphic design, and fine art. We sort of found, I guess, roadblocks with email systems and the fact that students weren't necessarily checking their emails. I think institutions have a habit of flooding everyone with emails, and that becomes kind of, if it's your job, then you're kind of deciphering and sifting through them, but the students tend to miss stuff. So we were progressing to platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, but we found that we weren't really comfortable with the kind of fact that they were subjected to advertising, and there was ambiguity about their data security and that kind of thing. So I think it seems natural progression to want to have something similar, have a similar feature set, but within the sort of the Microsoft, or at least the programs that IT supply. I tentatively found out, listened to a few podcasts, I think, about Teams, and so it was on my radar. So I guess I'm sort of quite interested in learning about things, and so I kind of poked around and learned a little bit, and it just seemed like a good way to kind of move forward. I did a little pilot with some of my students, and I think that was the biggest kind of move in terms of the feedback was unprompted, almost instantaneous, and I think what was really great about it was it plugged in lots of other things. I think for software to be successful, or any systems actually at university, it's all about footfall, and if you haven't got a groundswell of people using that particular platform, then generally it sort of becomes sidelined. I think there's several things as well. So you can get your timetables on it, which was really fantastic. So that syncs up with Cellcat and the kind of timetable systems, so students can, which is a problem we always had in terms of getting students to actually arrive on time. So it almost becomes a one place where they can get all their information, like a hub. Well, I think there again, as we explored using that more, it's I think being able to kind of critique and actually have a conversation rather than it being a one-way kind of communication, it just became more interactive. So I think from my perspective in visual arts, I can actually post up links, I can talk about the links, there might be links that the students themselves find, so it's visual, and I think from that perspective it's much more, they're again intuitive for vision-minded students. We might have fractional staff that aren't in all the time, and that information is held within the staff's knowledge base. And the student that needs to get hold of that knowledge has got a pathway to that member of staff. But if it's not on the day they work, then potentially roadblock, or it's not there's no way to get to that information. So I think by distributing the kind of the platform allows the distribution of knowledge much more easier. So it might be that another student knows that information, and by posting that out, that question, and not only may they connect with the staff, but also they've got the peer-to-peer kind of learning as well, and knowledge transfer. And I think for me that's the real kind of the winning factor really.
So he uses a lot of connectors as well. So in Teams there are connectors. So he uses one called mind mapping. It's a kind of a tool to kind of give the big picture at level 4 undergrad first year for the students. That's the graphic I've got on the side there to kind of give the students an idea of visual design, from whether it's in buildings to graphic design, which is what his area is, through to other areas that come together. And that big lecture you saw was all of the various visual arts and graphic design students being taught in one place, but then also having lecture capture and other connectors kind of built into Teams. And we've also done an integration with our CellCat timetabling system as well, and through our student information systems as well. So we've got modules that are created on a 15-minute cycle and updated and synced with the integration software. I'm not going to show you that one. That's also online on our YouTube channel. This is positive psychology, a postgrad lecturer. She was using it last term, so she's actually had a term's usage of it. It was from July, and she's using that as a way of kind of interacting with her postgrad positive psychology students, some of whom who can't make it on campus and are using Teams as a kind of webinar tool. So that's what that case study is largely about. So the main 4 areas that I'm going to discuss today are why would you use technology in the first place? Why Teams? What we did in terms of the scale of our project. What are our experiences from both our staff and students, and then lessons learned in terms of planning, training, and evaluation, and our next steps in planning, training, and evaluation. So those are the kind of main areas. So we started our journey with Teams around November, December last year. We had Microsoft in. It was something that our Vice-Chancellor wanted to really exploit as a tool in addition to our VLE, which is Moodle. So we had a discovery day, and I know Claire and Alan at the back came and spoke to all of our senior leadership team. I was there, loads of other people were there. We kind of got that kind of fluency of what it was then, and then we kind of started to work on the project in February onwards. So I'll discuss the scope of the project in a moment. And then we had pilots in graphic design and psychology from around April onwards, so they started to use it. And then in June, we started to really engage with our stakeholders who are teaching level 3 and 4 students. So we had Claire in June, I think it was, mid-June, and then we also did summer workshops throughout the summer for the staff as well, and also online resources and things that are already available on the Teams website and guidance documentation that's online. So the training is still continuing. So we had an all-staff day looking at employability and mental wealth, which is graduate skills and employability in the curriculum. So we did an all-staff day. We have about 1,300 staff and about 550 odd turned up. So this is both professional services staff and academics. And we had a range of sessions run by myself and some of my team and other people within the university who were looking at the various graduate attributes. We have 9 graduate attributes closely related to some of the discussions that already happened this morning. And then in October, we've gone live with 26 of these mental wealth modules at level 3 and 4, so that's the kind of scope. This is the institutional perspective. This is about 500 odd staff in that photo, and we piloted a few things, including the Jisc Digital Pursuits game that Shri at Jisc has made. So Kevin and John, my learning technology advisors, they kind of piloted that with our staff, looking specifically at digital proficiency. So that's one of our 9 competencies. So why technology? We're a careers-focused university at the University of East London. That's not a unique USP. In this day and age, at least. The rationale behind using Teams and also looking at how learners are going to be changing in the future. This OECD learning framework, which has some of the competencies that we use at UEL, looks at how the world needs to change in order for employability to be relevant in the world of work. So we've got these mental wealth modules across all of our levels, from level 3 to 7. And the reason why we have them as modules is so that we can actually measure them in relation to everything else. Lots of universities have graduate attributes. I've worked in places and studied in places that have graduate attributes, but they're not specifically measurable by a particular module. So the idea of having one module that looks at skills and competencies that's contextualized within either the cluster, a group of programs or courses, or across the school is how we're kind of looking at it. And the ultimate aim really is to make skills and employability explicit within the curriculum so that the students know that what you're doing here is linked to the world of work, and we've got plans to kind of, this is one part of our kind of careers jigsaw. So why teams? Fundamentally, it's something that we are an Office 365 university, so we had Teams as a business communication tool. It's more likely to be used by students or something similar in the world of work. No one really comes to you and say, have you used Moodle or Blackboard? Not much, unless you are going to become a teacher. So it's really about using a tool that they're going to use in the world of work, and then also it's more likely that the students will use it, but it's also a good platform to run on various mobile devices, and it's already in that Microsoft ecosystem, so you don't need to think about usernames, logins. You've got Office 365 integration happening there. So and we also have a connector for Moodle, so we have an integration with Moodle. So it's not a deep integration. It's basically an iframe, and then the thing comes in, the Moodle module comes in as a tab, and I'll show you that in a moment. So I discussed earlier about the use of the mental wealth modules as the kind of pilot. So we've got 26 running in term 1, and we've got a variety of courses that have already used this already, but we're also looking at using this, and we have been using this extensively with our professional services. So my team, HR, IT, others, they all use Teams and we've had in my team days where we're completely virtual. So we're not physically there, and we're having a team meeting, for example, just to kind of get us used to using this as well as the students as well. We want to do more of that in the coming months. So probably can't see this, and this is probably a good thing that you can't see the exact detail. This is a picture as of yesterday as to some of the activity that's currently happening on, this is both term 1 and 2, so some of these modules are not, these are not term 1 modules, these are term 1 and 2, but you can see the green spikes are the messages, and you can see the active channels are the orange, and you can see the other bits and pieces. It's early days, but I'm giving you a taste, and some of our most active modules have over 500-600 messages and interactions already. I mean, these are modules that have been already doing stuff with distance learning already, so they have got either a distance or a blended mode already in education and in psychology in our departments there. So these are those modules, but we're kind of seeing it's an early shift to a more kind of pedagogical use of it, but also the communication aspect of it is kind of really changing the ways in which our students are kind of using it. And as you saw with Dan's example there, that the students have picked it up. I think it's more a case of actually some of the staff needing to change the way that they facilitate the online learning and know how to facilitate that. That's our next challenge. So this is a live module of HR, so it's a business module. And we've got careers, Moodle, study skills, and our library and learning services as tabs there. So this was a kind of institutional template that was pushed out to all of the mental wealth modules with particular, specific tabs that are relevant to these kind of disciplines, this kind of subject matter. So they're there as a kind of quick, kind of link to study skills, to career zone, etc. So that's how that's looking, and this is how the integration with our Moodle system is working. So we are actually still using Moodle for the Turnitin, assessment areas. This particular lecturer is using it for content as well, because it works a little bit better than than Teams, because Teams is more about the collaboration, the discussion. We actually stipulated to all of our mental wealth module leaders to use Teams for anything that they would use a discussion or email the students through our VLE. We've said use Teams, and then for everything else, it's kind of up to them as to how much they use. So we've given them that agency there. So all of the Teams modules also have kind of setup guidance. It's kind of bog standard thing, so students know where to get the app and how to kind of download it and interact with it. So we had, in February, we had a kind of stakeholders meeting. So we have a project manager, which I'll discuss in a moment, how that kind of came about. We have a business sponsor, which is our PVC Careers, and also my line manager, the PVC Education. We had a technical advisor, obviously the IT department, and then we had, myself and my team as kind of business advisors in terms of the project. We met regularly, on a regular basis, to discuss both this particular aspect, the digital platform, but also mental wealth as a whole. So it's not just about the tool; it's also about the pedagogy and the way in which we want to transform the way we teach skills and employability. And this is just one tenet of it. So what are our experiences in terms of training, and also what do we think about Microsoft Teams in terms of what it does and doesn't do? So we've trained approximately 60 staff in the last 6 months or so. We've used a combination of face-to-face boot camps that our staff have gone on. We've used online materials that have been curated from the Microsoft pages. We have a SharePoint page on our IT system, so for functional training. We've offered 2 types of training, functional and kind of learning and teaching based. So our functional training is mostly through our IT department. They have 2 digital skills trainers, so they've been delivering those both face-to-face, but also pointing staff to resources. And then my team, the learning technology advisors, the 3 of them, they've been running workshops with staff in terms of how to make best use of it, and meeting program teams, course teams specifically, and kind of designing the kind of learning based on that. So some of our program teams have actually used Teams throughout. So Dan, you saw there, he's actually using it for all of his BA graphic design. He's got all of his modules on Teams. So he's kind of almost gone to that, kind of using Teams and Moodle concurrently. So these are some of the resources. You can have a look at those later from largely Microsoft. The demo site's really good, and also the resources on the Microsoft pages there. So, and we also created an interactive PDF document which we put up online, which kind of gave staff kind of a minimum standard for Teams as well. So that was created by one of my colleagues. So that was a kind of bespoke thing, maybe slightly over-engineered and slightly too much, as I was told by a couple of staff. But it kind of gives you, gives you an idea of what we've used that's already out there, and then done a little bit of curation and bespokeness to it. So, what are the barriers with Teams that we've faced, both with the platform, the integration, etc.? Staff are really used to acquisition, talking about Lorillard's 6 activity types, which is a link down there. They're really used to putting, the content up there and doing good face-to-face teaching, probably not dissimilar to what I'm doing right now in front of a lectern, kind of talking at the students. They're not really good at collaboration, co-design, these kind of things. This is what we discovered in our mental wealth development day. And this is where we have a specific development need, which is, one of the raison d'etres for my department. So the Teams at the moment is a business communication tool. There's 2 versions of it. There's both the business version and the education version. And if you are using any LinkedIn resources, then the ones that are on LinkedIn, they're the business version, not the education version. Use the ones that are on the Microsoft Educator community. The Teams is not a VLE yet, or at least in our concept of a VLE. There isn't any Turnitin integration, and you might ask, well, do you need Turnitin integration? That's the question. There's no SCORM integration. Again, you might ask, do you need SCORM integration? Who uses SCORM now? there's no private channels yet. I know that's in development, has been since about July. And there's the quizzing and the assessment aspects are a little bit lacking compared to a VLE, but it depends on your discipline. For Dan, and graphic design is perfectly fine. He can kind of, he can create and be flexible and, use the tool as needed. But having that Moodle connection there is useful. So I would say that my personal advice is you use it at the moment as an addition to your VLE. And if it is Moodle, then there's already a connector. And if there's, if you're using any other VLEs, then, you can kind of at least use it on the side and link to it. If it fits your learning design, just to say that. It depends on what you're teaching and also what you want to achieve by using that tool. So I'm going to, I've talked for a while, and I know we're probably coming up to time. But I want to get...
Are you provisioning teams for all modules?
Yes. Yes, well, it's not for all modules, but for the careers and employability ones, yes. And we have a in VLE flag as you would do in your SITS or SIS. So yes. If you'd like to get your mobile devices out and go to menti.com and put that code in, I just want to know what your experiences of Teams has been in your organisation so far. So this is not one-way didactic lecture. Early days, Marmite, love it or hate it. Pilots among specific communities, yes. We've taken an at-scale approach, obviously, at UEL. Love it. I'm not Microsoft, honest. Okay. I think, yeah, okay, right. Some of the things that staff and students have said, obviously students, we're about to be giving them some feedback as a feedback form in the next couple of days, but some of our staff feedback so far, it's mixed. Some of them really like the VLE and they can't see where Teams is kind of meeting some of the parity features there, but some of them really just have taken to it. So I'll leave you to read those after this morning. So in terms of lessons learned, we needed a full-time project manager on this as a university. We needed longer for our pilots, which we didn't have. These are some things that you can probably take away if you're going to do this at scale. We have started to look at how we can universal design for learning, create the toolkit that's needed, which we started that. We could have started that a lot earlier. We needed to have switched on Teams for all staff to create earlier. So that's something to bear in mind. We also could have done a lot with our student union earlier as well to kind of get them on board. And we could have worked with the integration sooner. It was actually done in 2 days. It also involved my wife as well, which on a Sunday evening, but I won't mention that. Oh, damn, I have. We also started to do more pulse checking sooner to kind of fix some of the issues that we've got, and we've got about 40 odd responses from our staff already in terms of academics who are teaching it. So these are our kind of next steps, really, looking at how we have a more structured approach to the next phase, looking at how we get quality feedback from both staff and students, how we continue to develop the online resources, and then also to look at how we can kind of link this to scholarship of teaching and learning. And we've got a journal that is co-run by our education department and my centre. And we need to kind of do more research on this area. This particular link at the bottom is the only thing that my team have found that is a Teams research paper from July. From Staffordshire, I think it is, so not far from here, on the use of Teams as an undergraduate tool, and they kind of say the same things as I've been saying so far. It's not there yet. It's and it needs the staff to tell the students exactly how to use it, because they know how to use tools, but they don't know how to use certain tools for effective study. And on that basis, I'm going to stop. Thank you.